Fat Moose Comics is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Established in 1982 and under new ownership since 2020, Moose sells a wide selection of comics from every publisher and time period, along with action figures, graphic novels, posters, statues, and more. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany the next time you're in the Garden State, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Aw Yeah Comics celebrates and promotes everything that is wonderful about comics, toys, artwork, and the joy they bring to people. Visit them in person at one of their 3 locations: Harrison, New York, aka my local comic shop, Skokie, Illinois, or Muncie, Indiana. If you have kids and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further. Join Aw Yeah for exciting events, including creator signings, how-tos, and more. Visit awyeahcomics.com and follow Aw Yeah on social media for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked chapter in the character's mythology. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 2, Episode 18, Semi-Private Eye, is the author of Mr. Reeves, returning guest, Lou Koza. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. I really enjoy this. I've been enjoying all the shows, and this has been great. It's for me, it's a new energy, to watch the shows again and trying to keep up with you guys. The first season I came, just a little tinge, and I was behind. Okay, but I've been keeping pace this year for sure, and really having a lot of fun listening in. And Rich Roney's been outstanding, and also Dan. And so it's Dan Sanchez, that is. And so I really enjoyed everybody talk. You had Mike Carlin, right? And, a few other guys that you had, from season 1. And, the subjects and the things that you guys are bringing up are outstanding. So I'm just really happy to be a part of this. I really am. It's very.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you coming back on here. And, like I always say, I don't have the experience of growing up watching this show. I just don't have that perspective. But what I can bring is the perspective of someone who has read and watched a lot of Superman stories over my lifetime. And so I think finding those connection points between Adventures of Superman and the rest of the mythology, that's probably been an aspect of this that I've enjoyed the most. And I'm glad that we can bring that.
Yeah, you've done an outstanding job with, seeing, reaching out to all the different versions, the shows, and finding those little Easter eggs that connect one from the other. Okay, and it's outstanding. See, I used to kind of, think that way when I watched the Chris Reeves Superman movie, and there are little elements, in the movie that kind of take you back to the Adventures of Superman. Just to give you 2 examples. One is, when Superman goes down into Lex Luthor's, he drills into the street. And then, there's the walk where he has to, there's the machine guns and the fire. And when I see that's like a ramped up version of Test of a Warrior. Okay, which is one of the episodes in the color seasons. Okay, and you see these little similarities, these little parallels, and it's enjoyable. And what you guys are doing, you've got far more depth, okay, than I do, because I never really saddled up close to, let's say, Smallville or a little bit of Lois and Clark. I enjoyed that. And then there's also the new show, which I really haven't watched at all. But it seems like, many of the guests that you have on, have a wide area that you guys are touching. Okay. And then, you guys are watching the Adventures of Superman, later on, and you're just picking up things that are really outstanding.
Well,
So
it's very kind of you to say. I'll just say real quick with the new show that you referenced, Superman and Lois, which as of this recording is entering its final season. I really do encourage you to watch that at some point. You and I were talking off mic about my son and your grandson, who are roughly the same age. We were talking about just kind of that experience, and that show really leans into that father son family dynamic. I really think you'd like
yes.
it.
Yeah, I will. I promise I will, because it looks terrific. Some of the rescue scenes look great. I saw the one where he rescued the bridge. Okay, the bridge was collapsing, and I was like, "Wow, wow, this is really something." So
Absolutely.
I'm just bummed out about Henry Cavill not being the Superman any longer. But what can you do? I just wish they would have at least finished up where they were going. But there was, I guess there was a lot of issues, that the broad spectrum of Superman fans, weren't really happy with. So
a lot of issues, I think, is a good way to put it. And I will just mention for our audience here, if anyone's interested in a pretty thorough discussion of the Zack Snyder trilogy of movies, do check out my other show, Digging for Kryptonite. We went episode by episode, and we also did an episode ranking the entire DCAU. We went through all of them, DCEU. We went through all of the movies and ranked them. So we've talked about it a lot. And yeah, when you bring this up, there's definitely a lot there. And I share your disappointment about kind of how all of that transpired.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, on the subject, though, of course, of Adventures of Superman, I guess before we dive in specifically to this episode, Semi-Private Eye, when you were here towards the end of season 1 for Crime Wave, we talked about your experience, your fandom of Adventures of Superman generally. I guess I'm just curious, season 2 specifically, overall thoughts, overall impressions, where does it fall within your larger George Reeves Superman fandom?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I know the first season's got that hard edge crime drama. It's like the Untouchables, right? Okay, Elliot Ness and all of that. With season 2, it's polished. Okay. George Reeves looks fantastic. Not that he didn't in the first season, but, the whole show, is a bit more, the production's a little better. Okay. They know what they're doing. Okay. Lois is obviously, Noelle Neal, and a lot of people like that hard edge that Phyllis Coates brought, to it. But I still do, I love Noelle for all she is, having met her many times, been to her house twice. Okay, she's a gem of a woman. And with Semi-Private Eye, I recently watched it, okay, a couple of days ago, and I saw that the DVD had commentary. So, of course, I put the commentary on, and if you listen to it, it's almost like she's sitting in the room, her and Jack, because I knew them both. And, Noelle is obviously a much softer touch to the show. And I think, also her dialogue, probably is a bit more simpler than, the Phyllis Coates days. Noelle's got that also, like what Jack always says, or Jimmy, golly gee, but I love her. She's a gem. Okay. But I love the second season. If I were to, let's say, wish season 1 or season 2 to be colorized, I would very much so love to see season 2 colorized, because I think it would fit better. First season, we could leave alone. And the second season, I enjoy. There's a lot of great stuff in it. And I think even in the color years, when you get to that, I know there's a little bit of trepidation, out there about the color years, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's a lot of fun in there. So
I will say, well, I appreciate getting your take. And I will say, yes, I know I have expressed some trepidation, mostly because of how much I've enjoyed these first couple of seasons. And I know the color years are different, but honestly, I know we're going to have fun talking about them, and I'm excited to dive in, and it's going to be a great time. And I agree with you. I think season 1 is perfect in black and white. I actually really wouldn't really want to see it colorized. I don't love the idea of colorizing black and white material, even though the technology is there. And like, It's a Wonderful Life, one of my all-time favorite movies. I watch it every Christmas Eve, and I've owned it on every format that they've put it out on. And, so I have the colorized version, and I watched it, I think, once. I mean, I've been watching this every year for most of my life, and I watched the color version one time, and it's an interesting curiosity sort of thing, but I vastly prefer the original.
If you look at the, well, first let me say It's a Wonderful Life should never be colorized. Okay. But if you look at the episode I Love Lucy in color, okay, I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So
no, fair enough.
And then I hear that rumors are that that the series is coming out on Blu-ray.
That is the word. Now, we are recording this a little bit in advance. My expectation is maybe by the time that people are hearing this episode, maybe we'll have a formal official announcement. But yeah, as of this recording that you and I are doing, the word is that Adventures of Superman is being restored and put out on a complete series Blu-ray. Since they announced this James Gunn Superman movie, myself and I know a lot of other folks have hoped that it would kind of spur the release or re-release of other Superman media. We saw the same thing happen in the early aughts with Superman Returns, and the hope was we would have that again, and that seems to be the case. So yeah, fingers crossed for that. I would love to have that for myself, and hopefully it just gets more eyes on the show.
Definitely. I actually thought that they were going to go to a streaming service. Okay, but I'm really glad that I was wrong on that prediction. Okay. So I think, I think bringing the show, to Blu-ray brings it to another level. Hopefully the quality will be great, especially the stolen costume. Okay. And, thanks to a gentleman by the name of Dave Orbach, he had sent me a really good copy of Stolen Costume, and I sent it to Warner Brothers. Okay. And so hopefully, they use that. Okay. Or if they have something better, even better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I would love that. I would love, certainly for the Blu-ray, I would love for it to also be on a streaming service. The more places that this can be available, the better. And certainly, I know for myself, and I think a lot of superhero fans, comic book collectors, we really do hold on to the physical media. I think for the wider general audience, people are so comfortable with just streaming things. So if we can get it in both places, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I'm really excited. So, all right.
So,
Semi-Private Eye aired January 6th, 1954, written by David Chandler, directed by George Blair. I'm going to give my fairly detailed synopsis here that's going to kind of take us beat by beat through the episode, and then you and I will hone in on specific scenes and moments here. So here's my synopsis for the episode. Superman saves Private Detective Homer Garrity from falling chimney bricks. Later, Clark arouses Lois's suspicions when he claims he happened to be nearby to see this. To prove Clark is Superman, Lois and Jimmy place a weighted phone book on Clark's desk, but he notices and replaces it before their test. Still determined, Lois takes Jimmy to hire Homer to follow Clark. However, while Jimmy is testing out a two-way mirror, blackmailers Cappy and Noodles, the subjects of Homer's latest investigation, abduct Homer and Lois. Jimmy launches into Bogart mode and follows a lead to the pool hall, where he encounters Fingers, whom he follows back to his apartment. Jimmy accidentally handcuffs himself to the bedpost, but later escapes and tracks down Lois and Homer. Cappy drops him through a trapdoor and proceeds to gas the trio. However, Superman follows Jimmy's trail from Homer's office to the pool hall and arrives just in time to suck up the poison gas. Homer and Jimmy take down their abductors, Lois drops her Clark investigation, at least for now, and Jimmy handcuffs himself once again. So that's the overview of our episode here. So overall thoughts, impressions. I reached out to you a while back in setting up this season, and I asked which episodes you'd be interested in. This was one of the ones you jumped on. So yeah, just curious why and just kind of overall thoughts and feelings about it.
Well, I know it's Jack Larson's favorite episode, and many years ago, I guess it was around 1994, I did a little, sketch of the scene of Jack Larson or Jimmy Olsen where he was handcuffed to the bedpost, right? The footboard or the whatever you call that. So what happened was Jim Nolt. I sent it to Jim Nolt. Jim Nolt was nice enough to send it to Jack Larson at the time, and Jack Larson sent me back a nice letter. So that was my very first communications with Jack Larson, and then that was in '94. I met Jack in '96 in Metropolis. That was a fun, weekend. And then after that, I met him in 2001. We had an event. The Adventures Continue had an event in 2001 in Los Angeles. I met Jack again, and then ever since then, he had been phoning me every day, every year, a day or two before Thanksgiving to wish my family and I a happy Thanksgiving. And I always, had those occasions, it was just maybe a 10-minute talk because he had many phone calls to make. But once or twice throughout the year, I would have other conversations with him, which were, over an hour. Okay, and we talked about a lot of things. A lot of the things about George Reeves and his personal life. So to kind of touch base with a favorite episode of Jack Larson kind of felt good to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, I can appreciate having that kind of personal connection to the episode. And, you mentioned earlier the DVD commentary. I also watched the episode with the commentary track with Jack Larson and Noel Neill for this episode. And one thing was abundantly clear. It was how much Jack enjoyed doing this episode. You hear it in his voice as he's talking about it on the commentary track, and you certainly see it in his performance during the episode. That comes across crystal clear.
He had great lines. He really did. The best one is, my name's Olsen, right? And he just really did that. Humphrey Bogart. It was very enjoyable to watch. He enjoyed very much being able to do the comedy, in the show to bring that to the table. And listening to the commentary, he said he did that one scene. He suggested it, with the handcuffs when he gets caught with the, to the bedpost, and he had suggested it, and the director, had said, well, you better get it in one move or one take, because if you don't, we're going to move on. So he was surprised that it all worked out, and it's a great scene. Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's a great bit of business, a physical comedy, and yeah, that definitely stood out about the commentary. The other thing that stood out, and that's not specific to this episode, but Jack was talking about George Reeves and how he would take these naps, right? He would get to the point sometimes where he needed a break. He would walk off set. He would take these naps. And Jack didn't mind that part so much. But then a lot of times George would come back like very late. And then they had to stay and finish these scenes. And he's like, eventually I said to George, I'm like, if you need to take a well-deserved rest, it's okay, but don't come back.
Right. Yeah, that was, that story has made its way into the folklore of it all. And it's outstanding. And, adding to that story, he would say that when filming wrapped up, George thought that Jack was angry with him. Okay. And he says, well, Junior, he goes, we're going out to dinner. Okay. And Jack would always try to get out of it because he wanted to get home to learn his lines. And, but George would insist, and, that meant staying out late a little bit. So.
Gotcha.
Great stuff. Jack always had, really great stories.
Yeah, I can imagine. I obviously, I know these are private conversations you had, so I wouldn't ask you to betray his confidence. If there's anything that, you are able to share either now or at the end of the episode, I want to, of course, give you the opportunity to, but I know those were private conversations that that you had. The other thing, you mentioned from that commentary, the bit about handcuffing himself. Jack also talked about the cigar smoke in the scene in the pool hall, right, where they're where they're smoking the cigars, and then thankfully for him, happened to go out, and the director did not make them do another take of the scene because he said the cigar smoke really made him sick, which I very much identify with. I cannot stand that smell, and it actually, I realized over the years, because my dad and uncle would smoke them occasionally, it triggers migraines for me. In addition to finding it disgusting, it actually has that effect. So I really felt for him as he was describing filming that scene and how sick that cigar smoke was making him.
Right. And he used it for, comedian, expertise. He really, that cigar really made the scene. It was outstanding. He looked like he had a lot of fun doing this.
I will say, as far as my overall impressions of this, I enjoyed the episode. I don't think I got as much out of it as you did, but I did like it. I liked the fact that Jimmy had a spotlight, and I love what Jack Larson was able to bring to it. All of the Bogart movies that clearly Jimmy/Jack was drawing inspiration from, I have a general awareness, but I've not seen them. So that didn't necessarily resonate with me as much, but I certainly got what they were going for, and there was a humorous quality to it. I will admit that for a little bit of the episode, I was a little frustrated with Jimmy for not taking it more seriously, that Lois and this other person had been abducted. But then I stopped myself and I said, these people are abducted every week. So, it's probably they're probably a bit used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love, when he first, he was in a panic. He went to call the police, which I'm thinking, why isn't he calling Inspector Henderson? Right. But he's calling the general police department. Okay. And then he gets the brainstorm. He's going to be a PI, he's going to be a Seamus, and just loved it. And then, of course, later on, he doesn't know he's being recorded, and he goes, through this whole, series of speeches. And the best part is when, Clark Kent, shows up at Homer Garrity's office and plays the tape. And Clark is just having a ball listening to this. He's just, having his great big smile, and it was great. Just great.
I know this is Jimmy and Jack's episode, but I have to say, I think my favorite aspect was the Homer Garrity character.
Yeah.
I thought he was fantastic because what's so interesting about it is there's this stark contrast between what Jimmy thinks a private investigator is, what he's supposed to look like and sound like and act like, versus the reality that Homer Garrity represents, to the point where when Lois and Jimmy show up at Homer's office and he opens the door, Jimmy assumes that he's, I don't know, an assistant or secretary or something like that, and is surprised that that's actually Homer Garrity. And then there's all this discussion about Homer showing him his gun and weapons, and he's like, no, I've never had to use these, right? So I love that aspect of it, and I love that the show, I think somewhat subtly, makes that comparison. I thought it was great.
Well, I tell you, Eliza Cook Jr., in this part was terrific. I really enjoyed it because he played it really cool throughout the whole thing. He was not afraid of anything, right? And Jimmy, like you say, he has this impression of what a private investigator should look like. Okay, and Eliza Cook Jr., okay, or Homer Garrity is nothing as what he would have ever envisioned. And Homer Garrity, he doesn't look like a James Bond kind of guy, not at all. But still, the guy knows, the underworld, okay, and he knows how these guys operate, okay. And I got a big kick out of when, Cappy, pushes the button for the trap door, and Homer Garrity says, Cappy, he goes, that went out with high button shoes, and so it just added to how much Homer Garrity knows about things, and how So I thought he played it really well. He was really cool throughout the whole way.
He was cool as a cucumber. That line
Yeah.
was such a standout to me as well. And you're really not expecting it. And his reaction, it just tells you, it shows you so much about who this character is.
Right.
I know this is a recurring theme when we do these episodes, especially when we have a great character introduction like this. I know I felt the same way when we met Chris White earlier in season 2. It's like, I wish a character like Homer Garrity came back.
Right. Right. Oh, I should say certainly the case of George Reeves could have used a Homer Garrity.
True. Well, but also another thing that this made me think of, we're dealing with a private investigator here. Where was Candy Myers?
Right. Yeah.
Although I guess they wouldn't have. But see, now I was thinking about this. I'll give the show some slack here because Lois was looking to hire an investigator to investigate Clark, to follow him, to prove that he's Superman. Candy Myers clearly already has a pre-existing relationship with Clark. He, maybe wouldn't have taken that case. So
right. It's funny that there are many recurring actors in the show, and they don't all play. In fact, none of them ever play the same character. It would have been great to have Candy come back. Okay. And, there's a small number of characters that you'd really like to see, be recurring, but this is the way the show was. And, we have to take it for everything that's great about it.
I have to say that, like I said in my recap there, ultimately Lois kind of drops it at the end of the episode as far as trying to hire Homer. And I was very relieved for Homer's sake, because had he followed Clark, perhaps he would have discovered the secret, and then he would have been getting that one way trip to Superman Mountain.
That's right. You have warm clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people would have ended up on that mountain?
Yeah. It's my favorite kind of recurring bit to think about with this show. So you mentioned our actor playing Homer Garrity. We also have Richard Benedict as Cappy. He was Babyface in the Night of Terror episode from season 1.
Absolutely.
Douglas Henderson as Noodles, Alfred Linder as Maury, and Paul Fix as Fingers, who had a role as Ollie in Czar of the Underworld in season 1. Is there anything about any of our other guest cast here that stood out that you wanted to mention?
Yeah. Well, let me mention this first about Eliza Cook Jr. He was in The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart. Might have been in a couple of more. Okay. And he was also in a really wonderful horror movie, okay, House on Haunted Hill. Okay. And if you've never seen it, it has Vincent Price in it. And it's fantastic. Okay. And Eliza Cook Jr., plays a character who lost relatives in this certain house. And Vincent Price, as the doctor, has he has offered $10,000 for each person. I think there's like 5 of them, if they can spend the night in this house. And I won't give too much more away, but it's a fun horror movie. Okay. And Eliza Cook Jr., makes it all the more scarier, to watch, the things that he says, put you a little bit on edge. And he's terrific. Richard Benedict, okay, was in an outstanding movie called Ace in the Hole. He played a trapped miner in a cave, and the film stars Kirk Douglas. And Kirk Douglas plays this reporter, and he builds up this whole rescue, and because he kind of turns it into a carnival act, okay, because he wants this to turn into a really big story. So it's a really terrific movie also. Noodles, I don't know much about. I think Doug Henderson, but Jack in the commentary said that, after the show, that he became good friends with Doug Henderson. And then, of course, there's Paul Fix. Okay. Paul Fix played Sheriff Micah in the iconic Western television show, the Rifleman with Chuck Connors, which Chuck Connors, in one of the Color Year episodes, has a pretty good part in.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that rundown. And I appreciate that insight. Now, we've hit on a lot already. There are a few things as we kind of circle back through the episode that I wanted to bring up and or ask you about. That the opening scene where Superman saves Homer from these chimney bricks that are pushed on him. There is a line later where Homer speculates. He doesn't realize that someone actually pushed them onto him, and he's like, "Oh, those rotting chimney bricks." I was like, and maybe that explains why the bricks, they crumble instantly, right? As soon as he starts pushing them. But Superman starts throwing the bricks back up. And you mentioned before, we were talking about connection points between this and the Christopher Reeve movie series in particular. This very much made me think of Superman 4: The Quest for Peace and the I-beams that miraculously rebuild the Great Wall of China, where we just have the footage reversed. It very much made me think of that. We reference the television series Smallville a lot around here, and there's one Smallville rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor as they discuss each and every episode of the series that ushered in the renaissance of superhero TV. Listen to Always Hold On to Smallville wherever you get podcasts, and keep an eye out for the other shows under the Always Hold On to banner, including Arrow, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Superman and Lois, and Star Wars. Filmmakers and movie fans alike should be sure to attend these film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and Round Reel in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Take it from an alum of two of them. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Follow the festivals on social media for news about events, discounts, tickets, and more. Also, listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen on Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show, too. As we move forward, we have these scenes at the Daily Planet. I wanted to just get your take on this whole phone book test that Lois and Jimmy set up. I'm curious, your take on it generally, but specifically your feelings about how Clark chooses to respond to it and deal with it. I have some thoughts, but I want to toss it to you first.
Yeah. Well, Clark Kent was going to have some fun at Lois's expense. Okay. And what I love about the scene is at first he sits down. Okay. The 50-pound telephone book is off to the side. And as he's going through his desk, he doesn't really give much notice to it until he puts the other one on his desk that he had in the drawer, and he's still kind of fumbling. And then he does a double take, and then there's the smile. Okay. He looks at it, and he puts it in the trash can, and then he puts the other one right in the exact spot, and he's going to have a little fun. Okay. And, it's just, one of those, she needed, Lois Lane, of course, was on the hunt for, trying to put Clark Kent and Superman, together, right? She's trying to make that connection. And, he foiled her. Okay. But really, did he really? Because he had to, he picked up on, on the 50 pounds. Okay. So she's got in her head that, how did he pick up on it so fast? Because he's Superman.
Well, that's the thing, not to nitpick. And I know, here's the thing. We need to have the rest of the episode, right? We need Clark to foil this attempt, but to not fully disabuse Lois of the belief that she has. She still needs to think he's Superman, and she's going to try to prove it another way, because we need this episode to get her and Jimmy to Homer's office. Like, I get that. But in terms of how Clark responds when he realizes this ruse with the phone book, had he just, when Lois came in, had he not switched the books, and when Lois came in and asked for the phone book, if he had just pretended to struggle to lift it, that might have just kind of solved this for him. But it's like he had to have that bit of fun with her. And I mean, I don't know what to make of it. Again, putting aside the fact that we need the episode to continue to move forward, it's just like his thought process, or maybe he didn't think she was as determined as she was. I mean, I don't know, but it just kind of seems like if you were looking to really throw someone off the scent, this is not the way, because clearly she knows he realized and switched it.
Right.
So I don't know.
I hate to think that if he didn't realize it, okay, now Superman is strong, right? Okay, if he hadn't realized it and really picked it up and just tossed it like, and a 50-pound weight landed on it, that would be pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. But again, all to say that if he had just realized and said, okay, and then when she asked for the phone book, if he had just said, I can't lift it, then that could have been it.
Yeah, that would be pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, that's what I, would have expected. Again, someone trying to throw someone else off the scent. I feel like that would have been the more logical path. But yeah, I don't know. I think he just like really wanted to have that bit of fun with them.
Right. Absolutely. I thought it was fun. You got to remember, not all the episodes are going to be panic in the sky, right? As much as we would love to see them that way. Right. But you're going to get these, these lighthearted episodes, and those episodes kind of set you up for, the ones that are going to be, the 5 fedoras.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now, as far as Lois and Jimmy encountering Homer at his office, I think we've talked about a lot of that already. Kind of this sequence of events where we have Homer kind of explaining his business to Jimmy, showing Jimmy the two-way mirror, Cappy and Noodles coming in. We find out that there are these blackmailers who, again, Homer was hired to investigate, and they want to know who hired Homer. And of course he refuses. And that's what leads them to take Homer and Lois and try to learn this information from them. Is there anything else from this sequence here that stood out to you that you wanted to talk about?
Well, let's see. I thought it was pretty cool, that two-way, window. Okay. I think as a kid, I would have never seen anything like that. So it was pretty cool to see. Okay. And I think Homer's explanation of having that was fairly reasonable. Okay. I guess he gets clients in his office that he's got to make sure they're trustworthy. But what would they do if he wasn't in the room? Would they be, rifling through his desk? I mean, not sure why he would actually really need it.
That's actually a good point. I mean, especially if someone comes in alone, but I don't know, even just posture, like, are they sitting, are they calm, or are their eyes darting around? I mean, I don't know. But that is an interesting point. But I guess what I really liked about that was, again, as far as the show, as the television show showing you who Homer Garrity is, the fact that he has the integrity to care about whether or not his clients are trustworthy is interesting, because, we see this depiction in stories as well of this kind of seedier private eye who will just kind of take any job and doesn't care what it is or who's hiring him.
Right. That's
not the case here. Like, he actually cares about whether or not the people hiring him are honest. But I like that.
Right. Yeah. He actually was a pretty polished private investigator. I would say that he would be the best in the business. Okay, because you would think a lot of those kind of guys are, kind of seedy looking, and they always really want to blend in. But when you think about it, the way Homer Garrity is dressed with the suit and everything, that kind of still blends in, because that's how people dressed back in those days, especially in the city, right? So, and especially on the show, that's, he would just be blending in as a, regular looking guy. But I would think that he's rated the best in the business, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, very much so. And then, like we said, we follow Jim as he gets this call from this tipster trying to give Homer a warning, and he hears someone shout out Maury in the background, so that leads him to Maury's pool hall, and that's where he encounters Fingers and this bit with the cigar and the line that you quoted before of Olsen, and he's just making a meal of it.
Yeah. Yeah, terrific. Great stuff, and again, it's not Panic in the Sky, but I think this is, Jack really being allowed to cut loose, and so, it makes me happy for him because it was, good for him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Fingers when he says Olsen, he's like, "Oh, aren't you that butter and egg man from wherever?"
Right.
I had to look that up. Are you familiar with that term, butter and egg man?
No, not at all.
I think it's, and I looked it up, and I'm already kind of forgotten the exact definition, but I think it's something like a big spender or something like that. I thought it was going to be something completely different. I thought it was going to be like we were in like a hitman lingo or something like that. I don't know why I kind of had that in my head, but that's
I never heard the term, but I loved it when he goes, "Thanks, baby." He was good. I enjoyed it very much so.
Yeah. And like we were saying, as talked about in the commentary, had the handcuffing bit not worked, they weren't going to do it again. And I think Jack said they just would have both left the room together. So it's interesting. I wonder how the episode would have unfolded. I guess it wouldn't have changed all that much because the way it plays out, Fingers shows up at Cappy's place and he's like, "Oh, I got this kid handcuffed to the bed." And Cappy's like, "Well, bring him here, stupid." And then they bring him here. So I assume they just would have shown up there together. I guess it wouldn't have changed the episode vastly.
I don't know. It has to be. I've never seen the script. Okay. If Jack was improvising, okay, or saying, "Hey, let me give it a shot," okay, then it wouldn't be in the script. So I'd love to see the script because really I can't see how that scene would work. Okay, because Fingers has to leave and he has to depart from, Jimmy. What better way to do it? For them both to leave at the same time. Because then when Fingers goes and he meets up with Cappy, he has to tell him, "Well, I left him back there." Because Cappy has to say, go back and get him. But if they left together and just, departed, "Hey, see you around," there really wouldn't be that line, "Go back and get him."
I know. Or unless it was going to be like Fingers knocks him out or something like that and knocks him out in the apartment and leaves him there. And then, I mean, I don't know. I would be curious because when I heard that in the commentary, I did think to myself, I had the same thought as you, where it's like, well, okay, it's an important plot point to be left to improvisation. So it's like, okay, how would this have looked? Again, I don't think it would have, turned the entire episode on its head, but yeah, it would have, you would have had to have had a different connection point there.
I think it flows very well with the way they did it. And then when he eventually leaves, right, when he breaks free of the bedpost, okay, he's picking it up and, leaving the room, right? First, he goes through this whole ordeal of trying to get the bedpost, broken apart. And then as he leaves, he gets, he pulls it sideways, okay, through the door. Didn't make it through the door, but he got caught there. And then the post broke free. And I thought that was pretty good. He picked his hat up, said goodbye, and off he went.
Here's what I couldn't figure out, and maybe you can help me. So I went back and I watched it a couple of times. How exactly is he getting Cappy's address? Because it looks like Jimmy's looking at the phone itself and writing something down, and then looking in the address. I mean, the address book part. That makes sense, but I don't understand that first bit. Looking at what is he writing down?
I tell you, I'm a bit baffled myself. Okay, so I'm going to plead the fifth. Okay, so what happens is when he came into the room and Fingers is dialing, he could be, maybe trying to time, the distance with the rotary phone, right? So if it's a short, let's say if you're at 1, you're going to go, it's going to be quick. Then let's say if you're at 6, it's going to be longer. 9 is going to be the longest. So he might have been, writing down how long it took, to reach. Did you ever see a rotary phone?
Yes. I mean, I grew up in the era of the dial pad, but my grandparents did. They held on to their rotary phone for a long time. So yes, I am familiar.
So you see where the finger stops, right?
Yeah.
They have that little, curved catch. So he might have been timing it. Okay. But I'm going to tell you where I did get lost is how he figured out the address.
I mean, unless I'll go with your theory, right? And he's figuring out the number that Fingers had dialed, and then he's looking up that number, assuming the address book has numbers and addresses. Maybe that's how he was able to match it.
It sounds to be the only way, but I was a little confused with that, and I said, "Okay, off I go."
Yeah, I think that's one of those moments where that was not meant to be picked apart 70 years later by people on a podcast.
Right.
It's so funny though. You ask me, have I ever seen a rotary phone? It's so funny because it's like, have I ever seen a rotary phone? But if I were talking to someone else, younger than me, I'd be like, do you know what a landline is? Right? Like it's all relative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, times are changing.
I know. When Jimmy is eventually brought to Cappy's place and they drop him through the trap door, I know that was something that Jack talked about in the episode there. I bet you about that stunt.
Yeah. In the commentary, he said he dropped a long way. Okay. Now I tried to envision what that, set looked like. I can't imagine them really dropping him 8 feet, because 8 feet is a long way to drop. If you watch the scene when George Reeves drops, okay. Now, first you see him just drop through the floor, but when the scene cuts to him landing on the basement floor, you could see, by the way he's descending, that he, had to have been holding on at the top, okay, and then dropped, okay. Jack didn't give any real insight as to how far he dropped. He said it was a bit of a ways, okay, which I was really shocked, and I would have thought that they would have used, when it transitioned to the basement floor, that they would have used somebody, a stunt guy, okay. I find it hard that they use Jack, okay, for that. And certainly there, when Jimmy Olsen stands up, there's a little quick, break in the scene from one to the other. So, I'm having a tough time believing that Jack, landed, that was him being filmed landing. Now, him going through the trap door, okay, how far did he go? I don't know. I can't imagine that they would let him drop, 8 feet.
I had the same thought, and that's why watching it with the commentary and watching it just on its own, to your point, it's like, yeah, there is that break there. It's not like it's one continuous shot where it's clearly Jack Larson falling through and landing on the floor. And so, yeah, you would imagine that as the actor is standing there and the doors open, that it's a relatively short drop with pads there, right, that he's landing on. And then, then you have the other piece of the scene that's filmed separately of the actual landing. So, yeah, I don't know. That was a little perplexing.
Yeah, very perplexing. But nonetheless, great for the story.
Now, while all of this is going on, of course, Superman has to figure out what's going on and arrive to save the day. So there's a short scene with Perry and Clark where Perry has gotten a call from the police about Lois and Homer being abducted. That leads Clark to Homer's office where, like you said before, he finds this recording. Again, Homer Garrity, MVP of the episode. He had the foresight to hit record on the tape player. And so that's what Clark is able to hear. and then is able to follow the same lead that Jimmy did to Maury's pool hall. I loved the scene of Superman and Maury in the pool hall. And it's one of these things, I talk about it all the time about, and I know for fans like yourself who grew up with George Reeves as Superman, it's like there's just something about the guy that you just felt like he was Superman. And he's not, without special effects, like just the guy in the costume, but you buy him and he's like advancing towards Maury in the pool hall. You feel his power and his presence. And it's a great scene. And Maury throws pool balls at him. Like, I don't know what the plan was there, but and he crushes them. It was great. I loved it.
Oh, loved it. Loved the scene. It was a great Superman moment. I mean, even though, it didn't look like, the pool balls were really thrown at him. They weren't really thrown at him, too hard, right? But it was still effective. And he looked magnificent. Reeves as Superman, he looked magnificent. He really did. He was worthy of the title.
Yeah, and that scene in particular, just the lighting, the setting of the pool hall, like it just, it had a great feel to it. I enjoyed it.
That guy sitting in the back, right? He was sitting up against the wall in that high wooden chair, right? He was just observing, not saying a word, right? And so that was terrific. I thought it was great. And, then when, after Superman crushes, the pool balls, then he walks over to Murray and he wants answers. Okay. He's, this is no nonsense.
Yeah. Which, look, I love the character could be interpreted in a number of ways. I love this no nonsense, give me the answers right now version of the character.
Yeah, I'll break every bone in your body.
And then we get this big rescue where he shows up and he rescues the trio from the poison gas and inhales all of it, which I thought was cool how they did that.
Yes. Well, in one of the color episodes, and I won't say because let you find it when you see it when you find it. Another time he exhales it, right? He lets it all out. But here he didn't, right? And the thing is that when he picks up Lois and he carries her, okay, it's like he can't talk because if he does, it'll all come out, right? But I don't think I don't think we saw him, go over to the window and blow it all out. Next thing you knew, he was, speaking with Lois and asking how she feels. But what I do love is when, he's got her in his arms and he walks over to the door and he just kicks it down. And I was like, wow, that was terrific. That really.
I know. And that's, the physicality of something like that.
Right.
It's not nothing. I know. A lot of credit to him. And what I loved right after that, after he carries Lois out, is that, as I mentioned before, Homer and Jimmy, they take down the other two guys, which was, again, I not to belabor the point about how much I love this Homer Garrity character, but Homer and Jimmy, the two of them working together, that it wasn't, yes, they needed a rescue from Superman, but they were capable themselves and they were willing and able to defend themselves and take down the bad guys at the end. So I love that the episode allowed them to do that and that the characters took that opportunity. I thought that was a nice touch.
Oh, and then furthermore, the extra touch was when they both stepped over the two bodies, okay, in unison, okay, like Laverne and Shirley, which actually Laverne and Shirley came after them, but the way they stepped over, that was fun. And then they come up to the room where Superman is seeing how Lois is doing, caring for her.
Yeah. And I will say the final button here of Jimmy handcuffing himself again, in looking at all of these episodes that we've covered so far, sometimes I feel like the buttons at the end of the episode, they don't like quite fit with the rest of what the episode has been. This
Yeah.
was an episode where I felt like this was a perfect button. Like that made all the
Yes.
sense in the world that you would end on that note. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good one. Same with the the man in the lead mask, right? Where at the end he put the helmet on, right, and he couldn't get it off,
Right.
right? And runs over there. Sorry, Jimmy, I can't help you. And what I loved about the scene with the handcuffs at the end there is, Superman is sitting there, and just before, Jimmy, reveals, I've done it again. You could see Superman already smiling. Okay, that he already knows what he did. He doesn't even have to look. He already knows what Jimmy did. But yeah, an ending that really was on the mark for the episode. I forget what was the episode, where it just popped into my head where, Clark says to Lois, and you're a wonderful girl. Okay. I forget which episode that is.
Is that Superman in Exile? Is that the one?
Yes, I think
that's the
it.
one. I did not like that.
yeah, that was a little bit of a weak ending, for sure. Okay, but no, it's your point. You made a great point that it ended on a really great moment for the episode.
Yeah, I love a good button to an episode. It's just when they feel disconnected from what came before. That's where I'm just like, this could have just been in a different episode. But
right,
this has been so much fun to discuss. Now, as you know, we end by giving our rating of the episode, and I want to thank you publicly on the show because you went so above and beyond. You went back through all of our season 1 episodes, and you created a chart with all of the ratings that my guests and I gave the episodes in season 1. That was such a huge help. I should have just been keeping a record of it myself as the host, but I didn't. And you took that on, and I thank you so much. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. And my little contribution to your show. It's pretty good. And I really got to see or listen to, what you guys, were really referring to as 5 fedoras. Now I knew, I knew the benchmark. I knew what made the benchmark, like a Panic in the Sky. Okay. That's a 5. Face in the Voice. Okay. That's a 5. And so now I'm kind of on the same page. Okay. Because to me, before that, they're all a 5. Okay. I love them all. Okay. Because they all just work. Now that doesn't mean that, that there are things about it that don't work. Of course, there's quite a bit of it. But, as a kid growing up through it and having it as part of, it's been a part of my life, my whole life. And so, but now, you with your show, you've injected some new energy. Okay. And I'm seeing, the perspectives from a different generation. And that really, really has made a tremendous impact for me. Okay. And, because, I've been, with a bunch of people, a lot of the fans that are, we know that we could see the wires. We know that there's the bloopers, but we just don't see the shortcomings. Okay, we just embrace it so dearly that we just have tended to overlook. But there's a couple of guys, and I might have mentioned this in another show, Don Holmes and Carl Glass, a few years ago. They put together all the bloopers, okay, not video wise, but they listed all the bloopers, and I still, they must have listed way over 100 of them, but I still see from time to time a new one that nobody picked up on. and but your show has energized me to watch them again, and I'm seeing where you guys are coming from, and I really love it, because you're giving a real true take on it.
Oh, no, well, thank you so much for that. And I mean, I know what you're talking about because I watched Smallville, right, every week for 10 years during my high school and college and beyond years. And that was such a formative time in my life and in my fandom. I mean, I was old enough. I wasn't like a little kid watching it. So even with Smallville, I don't think I've ever been too precious about it. Like I recognize its shortcomings, and when we podcast about it, we talk about it. But still, there's such a reverence that I have for it. And then, in recent years, like that's a show that is available on streaming. It's on Hulu, and newer generations have come to it. And whereas I watched it, every week for a decade, people have binged the entire series in a few months. And yeah, it's a completely different perspective. And so, yeah, I mean, I love that we're doing this, and yeah, I hope more people, again, from my generation and younger, continue to find the show. Right, it really deserves to be seen.
Absolutely, and thank you for doing this. So I am keeping up the chart, okay, your Fedora chart. So have no fear. I'll send you the new list at the end of this season, and God willing, okay, I'll continue till you get through all of it.
Right on. So for this episode, how many fedoras out of 5 would you give Semi-Private Eye?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with, I just love what Jack did, but I know that this isn't a 5. Okay, but I'm going to give it like a 3.5 to a 4. Okay, so with Jack's performance, I'm gonna go with a 4 because he really it's his episode. Okay, I'd love to give it a 5, but I know what a 5 is. Okay, and he's been in 5s, so he doesn't, he's not missing out. Okay, but so I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna go. Oh man, I'm a little torn because part of me wants to say 2.5, but I'm going to go 3. Can I go 3? This is tough.
Yeah,
See, This is a tough thing because, and this happens all the time where I so enjoy the conversation about the episode. And then I feel like that makes me have even warmer feelings towards the episode. But if I'm being totally honest, I think this is a 2.5 for me.
Okay. Yeah,
sure. It's a 2.5 for me.
Yeah. Right.
Because I'll be true to myself.
Yeah, no, the truth shall set you free.
This was such a delight to have you here. You're going to be back later in the season for Lady in Black, so this is not the last we've heard from Lou this season. Before we sign off, is there anything you want to mention to people, anywhere you want to direct them to any of your work online?
Okay, well, actually, there's a couple of things that 2 other people have done that I'd like to bring attention, and then just one of my own, a project. There's a nice guy by the name of Kirk Hastings, okay, and he did this nice booklet, okay. So you might be able to find it on eBay, okay, and if not, okay, it's got some nice. I'll try, I've tried to do this before, but I'll just do a random page. Okay, he put together a nice little booklet, and it's on the history of George Reeves and the show.
And wait, what's it called? George Reeves from Woodstock?
George Reeves from Woolstock to Hollywood. Okay, and if you can't find it on eBay, you could certainly find Kirk Hastings on Facebook. He has a Facebook page, Adventures of Superman, 1951 through 1957. Okay, so he's very easy to find. And then, then there is this new book that just came out. Kirk's booklet came out, I'd say about 3 months ago. And I think he did a terrific job. Then there's this book, okay, by Bill Cassera, who was a friend of Phyllis Coates. Okay, and it's Phyllis's whole life, okay, and her career. And I think, thus far, I'm far from finishing it. So far, it's been pretty good. It's a very good read, and I've learned some new things about Phyllis. And I know that you're a big Phyllis Coates fan, so I thought I would um, plug these two books because they're the most recent. And then something that I've done is I've been I've gone to this website called newspapers.com, and I can go in there and find lots of newspaper articles and various things. And I came across the Superman dailies, okay, and I really, really fell in love, okay, with the dailies, the Superman dailies from let's say mid 1949 throughout the 50s. Okay, and this is a period that IDW Publishing did not publish the dailies. They have like 8 books on all the dailies, and so I started going through these and seeing some wonderful stuff. Okay, and so I put together some of the stories. I've got 2 at one by Win Mortimer, artist, and the other by Kurt Swan. Excuse me. And I sent them off to Steve Yanis over at the Superman homepage. Okay, terrific guy, and he has posted these 2 stories. I've sent him a third one, which dates back to the 1949, and I'm going to try to do the rest of them all in order to send to him if he continues to be interested in. But what I'm seeing with the artwork is Winslow Mortimer is very much reminiscent of the to me at least the black and white seasons of the Adventures of Superman. And Kurt Swan kind of is when he takes over in 56, okay, his Superman looks very much like the color years of the Adventures of Superman. So I would love to see people give those stories a chance, okay, because back in the day when they were printed in the newspapers, okay, probably a lot of kids didn't see them because they were more seeing the comic books, and this was in the newspaper, right? And the kids, small kids back then, they weren't really gazing too much at the newspaper. I'm sure they looked at the funnies, but this is terrific stuff, okay? And the 2 artists are just brilliant. The way they capture those times is just really amazing. So that's what I've worked on. So the Superman dailies, at Superman homepage, owned by Steve Yanis.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the work that you've done. It's funny as I get deeper into not just this podcast, but my other one, Digging for Kryptonite. I episode after episode, year after year, I'm closing more and more gaps in my Superman fandom, and I'm at the point I don't really have a ton of major gaps left. I've read and watched and listened to so much, but the newspaper dailies do kind of remain one of those gaps. I mean, I've read the tiniest fraction of them, and I always kick myself because I worked at my local comic shop for years and years, and I always remember seeing those hardcover collections of the dailies, and at the time, it just wasn't something that if I had known that one day I was going to be doing all these podcasts and I was going to want to read everything and talk about it, I would have snatched them up, and I wish I had. But so I love the work that you're doing, and I think it's probably more a question of when, not if, that I'll probably reach out to you about doing an episode on the newspaper dailies. Because I think it's a fascinating aspect that like all of these things that we talk about, they're gaps for somebody, right? But I feel like the radio show, the dailies, like those in particular are ones that even the diehard Superman fans, there's still a lot of us who have not experienced that, or at least not fully experienced it. So I love that you're doing that, and I do look forward to diving into that in the not too distant future.
Right. Yeah, those 1950s dailies is a huge gap. Okay. And there's an artist, that Winslow Mortimer. Okay. He is brilliant. He really is. I mean, when I look at that stuff, and I look at all the other, dailies of all the other characters, and his illustrations are just stunning, really are. And see, at first he tended to favor a look more like Wayne Boring, okay, but and that was in 1949 and part of 1950. But when he starts getting into 1951, his Superman, doesn't resemble, and his Clark, it doesn't resemble Wayne Boring at all. And Boring's got that big barrel chest, right, and a big thick neck, and kind of like a small, almost like a small forehead in a way. But Winslow's, his Superman is chiseled, and I could definitely see George Reeves in those illustrations, and I think he's just a greatly overlooked artist. He did a lot of covers, okay, but he didn't do many Superman interiors. Okay, there's one story that he did, and it's very good, but those dailies are just wow.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for joining me for this. Thank you, audience. I always appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, Lou will be back later in the season for Lady in Black. And of course, we'll be back with another all new episode next week. So make sure you keep tuning in. And as always, remember, only Superman can do super things. Be sure to check out our sister podcast series, Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a weekly exploration of Superman's vast 85-year mythology, available wherever you get podcasts. Please join us on social media, become a patron, and subscribe, rate, and review today. Links are in the show notes. Thank you all.